All right, y'all, let's get into the story. A lot of stories going on politically. This is probably the craziest administration from a news standpoint, politically, that I've ever witnessed in my life. And y'all remember when I said this? I said this when Trump got elected for the second time. I said this. I said, I don't know about y'all, but this feels like a deeply spiritual election that we just all went through. And I was kind of like glad when it was all like said and done, because it was a lot. But little did we know, it was really just the beginning. It was really just the beginning. Now, this is one of the top stories that was trending yesterday, which I find to be extremely interesting, which I want to talk about. Furthering our discussion on immigration. It says the Trump administration denies re-entry to deported professor who attended a terrorist funeral. Let me just press play and then we'll have a conversation.
Every day now we're approving visa revocations. If you tell us when you apply for a visa, I'm coming to the U.S. to participate in pro-Hamas events, that runs counter to the foreign policy interest of the United States of America. It's that simple. So you lied. You came. If you had told us that you were going to do that, we never would have given you the visa. Now you're here. Now you do it. So you lied to us. You're out. It's that simple.
The Trump administration crackdown against hate continues. The DHS announcing that it has denied a Brown University doctor re-entry to the United States because of her support and sympathy for the terror group Hezbollah. That includes attending the funeral of Hezbollah's former leader. And now the elite school is telling international students and staff to avoid travel outside the United States. Joining us now is Brooke Goldstein, Executive Director of the Lawfare Project. Great to have you here. Here's what DHS posted about Dr. Alawiya. That last month she traveled to Beirut. She attended the funeral of Hassan Nasrallah. He was, of course, a brutal terrorist who led Hezbollah, responsible for killing hundreds of Americans over a 4-decade terror spree. Alawiya openly admitted to this to CBP officers, as well as her support of Nasrallah. A visa is a privilege, not a right, and goes on to say what Rubio said. How does the government fare on this one, Brooke?
I think very well. I don't think there could be a stronger case not to allow someone entry into this country.
So this is interesting. You have a professor leaves the country to attend a funeral of the former Hezbollah leader. Upon re-entry, the government, I don't know if they were tracking her phone. I don't know how they got access to her phone, but the government knows a lot more than we think that they know. The government found some images and some photos on her phone of her at the funeral, of her with this individual in question. And they were asking her, kind of like, what's going on with this? And she was very open. She was very honest. She was, she said what it was, that she traveled over there to attend his funeral. And she said that she didn't necessarily agree with his political stance, but she said that she did subscribe to his spiritual beliefs and whatnot. And using that information, they denied her reentry, and essentially deported her, which it's very interesting. So I think people get upset sometimes. Not all of y'all, but some of y'all get upset because I'm kind of like, I don't necessarily choose one side. Like y'all, sometimes I think y'all be thinking that like I have to choose a side, whether it's the right or the left. Like, I don't got to choose a side. The only side that I choose is Jesus. And the beauty in that is that I can see the perspectives of both sides, and I can see why a decision was made to deny reentry. But then also I can see why, there is outrage from the other side at the fact that she was denied reentry. And I think that's a beautiful thing, but the downside of that is that, you get called all these type of things because you don't want to pick an allegiance to one side, which it is what it is, right? ultimately, the thing that's very interesting to me about this case, and we'll continue this video, and I have another video that I want to show from a more, liberal news company. The thing that I'm seeing that's very interesting about this case, the amount of hate in the comments for this individual, for this professor that was deported. The amount of hatred in the comments is extremely interesting, and it's very dangerous from the perspective that you're allowing your heart to get to a place. You're allowing your heart to get to a place where you hate another person. But what did Jesus say? Jesus said that if you hate your brother or your sister, that you have committed murder in your heart. And this is a very dangerous path that we're going down. So let me just put a pin in that thought and we'll get back to it. But let me play a little bit more of this video. Then we'll go to the more liberal news coverage of this.
They've provided allegedly material support to a designated terrorist group. And I think all of the arguments about free speech are very dangerously and intentionally misleading. You do not have a free speech right to come into this country after attending the funeral of a terrorist leader that has participated in multiple attacks that have killed American citizens. I'm so concerned with Brown University's response here. They are advising their own students not to travel, and they've released a statement saying they're concerned about the pipeline.
Let me put this up on the screen. So this is Brown University. In a letter to students yesterday, it was reported widely that we understand that many in our community are feeling a great deal of uncertainty and anxiety. Out of an abundance of caution, we encourage international students, staff, faculty, and scholars, including U.S. visa holders and permanent residents or green card holders, to consider postponing or delaying personal travel outside the United States. So they put the chill on. I want to ask you one thing, though. So Alawi, as I understand it, she did attend the funeral. She said that to DHS. But is attending a funeral considered material support?
Well, we don't know exactly what she did at that funeral, and I would argue, yes, it is. It's not a matter of free speech. You are flying to a foreign country to show your support for a designated terrorist group. And what's so troubling about Brown University's statement is how many people do they have at that school that they're concerned that they shouldn't travel outside the country. They shouldn't be concerned unless they're importing terror supporters as doctors and medical students. And how would this woman even take the Hippocratic Oath when her spiritual leader is Hassan Nasrallah, who has called for the elimination of Americans, who supports the killing of American civilians and Jewish babies, all for the sake of jihad? It's insane what's going on at this university. They should be concerned about the process.
So, as she said, this is her spiritual leader. She traveled back there to attend his funeral. She said that she didn't really agree with the political side of it, which is interesting. Being that he's a very, political individual with his beliefs and whatnot. But she more so ascribes to the spirituality standpoint of it. Now, they had a rally at Brown University for this doctor that was denied entry. It's so interesting, the different headlines. So this one says, rally for Brown University doctor denied entry to U.S. held in Rhode Island. Let's watch.
Support for a Brown University doctor who was detained at Boston Logan Airport before being sent back to Lebanon. Now, the federal government says she has been supporting terrorists and attended a Hezbollah rally while overseas. Thank you for joining us. I'm David Wade.
And I'm Lisa Hughes. Her case has become an inflection point in the nationwide battle over immigration and security. WBZ's Brandon Truitt takes us to Providence, where demonstrators rallied tonight to support her.
This rally was at the State House. We're about a mile away from Brown University. The crowd was overwhelmingly in support of Dr. Rasha Alaway. Many believe she is the latest victim of immigration enforcement targeting Muslims.
This is what solidarity looks like.
We want justice, you say how?
Dozens of people gathering in Providence supporting a Brown University professor of medicine denied entry back into the United States.
She was basically ambushed at Logan Airport, not given any rights.
We do not have due process. We do not have a free democracy.
Dr. Rasha Alloway did years of higher education, including medical school in the U.S., and was granted a work visa earlier this month. But when the 34-year-old landed at Logan Airport on Thursday, she was detained and sent back to Lebanon. WBZ got our hands on court records Monday before a judge ordered them sealed. They shed light on Alloway's interview with customs agents. CBP says they found pictures of Hezbollah militia and the designated terror group's leader on her phone. Court documents also say Alloway openly admitted to supporting him and attending his funeral. In her interview with customs, Alloway says she follows him for his religious and spiritual teachings, not his politics.
Okay. So obviously, the Trump administration, obviously, based on the information that they obtained, the images on her phone, the support of this dude, based on how they've been very serious about immigration to this point so early on in his, second run as president, it's not a surprise that they denied her, re-entry. It's not a surprise whatsoever. It's not a surprise. It's not a surprise that the left is outraged by this because, as the news reporter said at the very beginning, this is, an inflection point of the immigration war that we're seeing between the left and the right. Because I think the left feels like, Trump is going to go, and this goes to this goes back to the judge who told Trump not to deport them dudes to El Salvador, and he went against that. This goes back to that point as well. I think they feel like, he's going to completely go against the law and go against the Constitution, and he's pretty much just going to pick whoever he wants, and he's going to send them back for whatever reason. I feel like they think that it's going to get to that point. On the same token, you look at the comments like on the Fox News videos, and it's very interesting the amount of hate that you see in the comments. And it burdens my heart because y'all don't understand the place that you are going to end up in if you continue to foster this type of hate in your heart. Because ultimately, here's what we know. The media wants to pit us against one another. The media constantly wants us to be opposed to one another. Same with political. From a political standpoint, the whole system is designed for us to be against one another. But here's the thing. Being completely honest, we're all fighting the same war at the end of the day. Whether you want to hear that or not, we're all fighting the same war. We're all fighting the same war against sin. We're all fighting the same war against this flesh, whether you want to admit it or not. And we all have different responses to that war. Some of us have a response to where we give into the flesh and we start to satisfy it and we start to do some horrible things. Others have a response where we start to seek truth spiritually. And unfortunately, because we live in this world that is fallen, because we have been deceived, there's a lot of counterfeit truths from a spiritual standpoint that people are subscribing to. You know what I'm saying? So ultimately, what should we be doing in these type of situations? I don't think the response should be anger. I don't think the response should be anger. I think we should look at it from the standpoint of Matthew 5:21. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council, and whoever says, you fool, will be liable to the hell of fire. That's an interesting way of putting it. I don't know what's going on. What's going on with the ESV translation? That's an interesting way to put it. What am I trying to say? We live in a culture, we live in a society that is constantly trying to foster these works of the flesh within us, right? Now, the works of the flesh are evident: sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, divisions. This is all what we're seeing throughout the media. It's trying to foster this environment for us to be rivals. It's trying to foster this environment for dissensions, for disagreements, but not just disagreements, because I think a healthy amount of disagreement is necessary to get to the truth, but they're trying to foster disagreements in a way that create hatred. And this is happening on both sides. Divisions. This is happening on both sides. And I think we have to be very mindful and aware of what's happening at the root of it. Now, as I said, I don't know why I don't know why this dude is her spiritual, teacher. I don't know why this dude is her spiritual leader. But as I said before, we're all battling and we're all fighting the same war, the war against the flesh, the war against sin. And we all have different responses to that. And unfortunately, she got wrapped up into some stuff, and it seems like she's involved with the wrong people. And we know that that's not going to end up with her finding the truth, because we know that the truth is only found in Jesus Christ. Right? But at the same time, I don't know what you would expect, especially with this administration. Like, you're showing your support openly for an organization that has been designated as terrorists, right? You're openly showing your support. Like, you ain't gonna get back in here. That's just pretty obvious. That's pretty obvious. But I think we're going to get to a spot, we're going to get to a place politically, and I think we're already there. We're already at this place politically where no matter what side you're on, there's never going to be agreement. There's never going to be agreement no matter what side you're on. Let's continue this video though.
Immigration attorney Stephen Roth says CBP can search a phone at an airport for national security reasons and can deny immigrants entry to the U.S. even if they have a visa.
But CBP has statutory, regulatory, and legal precedent on their side that allows them to search anyone's phone coming into the United States.
For their part, the Department of Homeland Security says a visa is a privilege, not a right, glorifying and supporting terrorists who kill Americans as grounds for visa issuance to be denied. This is common sense security. Dr. Alloway's legal team claims that Customs and Border...
And that's what I'm saying. It is common sense when you think about it. It is common sense. It is common sense. Like, your actions are showing support for this organization. Your words are showing support for this organization. So it is common sense to believe that the U.S. ain't gonna let you back in after you've shown this support. That is common sense. But at the same time, let's take a step back as a whole and just really examine like what's going on and what's controlling the situation, which are spiritual forces. Let's stop focusing so much. Here's the thing. Let's stop focusing so much on the person, and let's start to understand that there's spiritual forces that are at play here. This is not a battle against flesh and blood. This is spiritual warfare. There are real spiritual forces at play. But I think what's happening is that on both sides, the media is trying to foster within our hearts a hatred towards certain individuals. And I think that's going to lead us down a very dangerous path. It's going to lead us down a very dangerous path. I'm not telling you to completely disregard common sense. I'm not telling you to completely disregard your personal convictions that you have, but you need to make sure that that's coming and rooted in the proper place. Because the media doesn't care. The media doesn't care if you have this hatred festering in your heart. The media would probably honestly want you to have that hatred festering in your heart so that you would continue to click on their articles and consume their content. They don't care about your spiritual health. They just care about your attention and keeping you glued and locked onto a screen about what's going on. What I'm saying is, let's offer prayers for everybody involved. Let's offer prayers from the standpoint of, this individual who has clearly been misguided, who has clearly been misled, who has clearly been deceived into thinking that something that is evil is good, right? Let's offer prayers in that regard. But then let's also offer prayers from all the people who are in absolute blind support of every single thing that the Trump administration does and that he can do no wrong. His spiritual advisor said that saying no to Trump is like saying no to God. Let's offer prayers for those individuals that they can start to have a deeper understanding and a higher discernment. But at the same time, these are tricky topics. These are tricky topics because we're dealing with politics. We're dealing with national security. And we're dealing with the fact that we went 4 years without any national security. Any and everybody was being let in. And not only that, not only were they being let in, but they were being given thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So it's a very tricky time. But I think, what we can control is our response, and what we can control is our heart. But once again, y'all want me to pick a side so bad. I ain't picking a side. I pick Jesus. I pick Jesus. Going to that point,